All right, guys. Hey, and welcome to my Randy interviews stuff. I'm here today with Mr. Rusty Joe Gates, who, if you are unaware, is a professional WWE wrestler on the weekends. He's with the B team that usually gets beat up on Sunday mornings. So, Rusty, welcome.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here. Yeah, I try to keep my wrestling under the rug, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
I definitely I think I was born for that.
What else don't we know about Rusty besides wrestling? By the way, Rusty doesn't wrestle. If you haven't picked up on the sarcasm, the kind of curious humor there, Rusty. Hey, look, what I would really like to do in the very start is just like tell us a little bit about yourself. So this is your moment, just to kind of give us a quick introduction, and then I want to dig into just a couple of things. Like you're one of the people who, gosh, I don't want to say adore because it sounds funny to say on an interview, but I adore. I love our conversation. So hit us up with that.
Yeah, well, okay. So my name's Rusty
No
Gates.
pressure.
I'm 32. I am a Scorpio. I I'm a serial hobbyist. I basically every month have throw myself into something new to try to learn it and see if it sticks. And
Yep.
over all those years, maybe a handful of things have really stuck, and I can kind of transition between those things. I currently am a realtor and love that, and have been doing that for over 2 years now, and have found some level of success in that. Not in small part due to the support that I've received from you yourself. So
Always
thank you
kind.
very much. But before that, I've done a lot of different things. I spent years and years in church world working for churches, and then in between church world and real estate, I was with a corporate search firm that helped churches and nonprofits find pastors, which was kind of my segue. So I feel like I've done a lot of different things, but it's almost always really people focused. And I think any success that I have had is my ability to just kind of smile and be like, okay, like we
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
we can make that happen, and maybe be a non-threatening presence. So yeah, I'm married, got two kids. I have an almost 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they're awesome, and I love them. And being a dad has absolutely been one of my favorite things to do in the whole wide world.
Yeah,
Uh, it makes me a happier and healthier person in every way.
yeah. I love it. Rusty. So one of the things that I was thinking about as I was getting like my mental preparation for today. Oh my gosh, I have to just tell this story. This is not funny, but it's just funny. So I'm currently getting away a little bit. Ellen and I are away. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to position the camera. We're at the lake and I can see the lake. So I'm going to work all day long from a kitchen table staring at the lake. Um, and these two ladies paddleboarded and I watched them paddleboard. I'm like, dude, you're a long ways away. There's no way I could survive that. And they're on their way back. And I just saw them like, oh my gosh, here they come again. That's brilliant. And as I looked, thinking how brilliant this was, one of them, I guess I said some bad juju, just totally bombed out, and the paddleboard is floating away from her, and she's swimming after it. There's like, and now she's struggling to get on top of it. This is comical, but I don't think it's nice to laugh at. However, there we go. I don't even know what we're saying. I got so distracted. This is so. Here's the deal. You and I have so many great parallels because I
Yeah.
think you would have paused right then and told the same story. Be like, oh my gosh, y'all got to see what I'm seeing right here. All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Rusty, one of the things that I look at is that I got to figure out how to word this in the right way. But I think one of the things that I admire about you is your ability to analyze fear
Mm.
and take steps into the directions that you know are right, regardless of where the fear sits. And one of the key ingredients to that, like little thought process in my brain, is about you. You stepped away from a very specific business that you had a
Hmm.
very great skill in, and you're doing really great to really start to chase into some of your own legacy moments, right? So with real estate, and so you quit one thing cold turkey to move into the next thing, and
Yeah.
found that's just one example, but it's a very prominent example because you already had a family at that point. So what are some of the things that you do, like capitalize on fear, which is probably the weirdest way to word the question, but I think it's a great way. What do you do to capitalize on fear? How do you capitalize on fear?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a part of that is really trying to step back and get a little perspective. And see what the bigger picture is in the given situation, right? So, they talk a lot about the idea that you'll never change until the pain of staying the same is greater than like the perceived pain of changing. And so for me, whenever I made the transition to real estate, I mean, it was kind of there wasn't a whole lot of choice where I was. Jess was pregnant with Matthew, our second son, and we were looking at the numbers and saying, okay, when he's born, we won't pay our bills. Like, that's just a fact. Like, and there wasn't any more money coming from my company. Jess definitely couldn't change or shift and have any significant income. And so it was just like, well, we have to make a change. Like, this is just a non-issue. Or like there's like, we can't debate this, like something has to give. And we had cut back as much as we could. And so it was just a matter of like, well, what is going to be that next thing? Now, real estate, I think a lot of people, they get into it because the barrier of entry is fairly low, like all things considered. Like if you want to go get into nursing, you have to do like at least 2 years of school, if not more.
Let's just pause and say it's really low.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you're okay with it. Like you can pull punches on this. I am down for the legitimate conversation. Like I wish it was higher.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just be honest with you. As a leader in real estate industry, like, man, I wish the barrier would raise, because I look at it as such a professional space, and I consider myself an advocate in what I do every single day, and that does wane when the barrier of entry is so low, because professionals, gosh, how do I say this properly? Professionals don't get into the industry. Dreamers do, and dreamers are okay, but there's very few dreamers who are also professionals. I'm not being rude, I'm just being real. Okay, so if you're a dreamer, just pretend like I was talking about you as a professional as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just it's a couple things that it does. I mean, it's good, I think, in a lot of sense that the barrier of entry is low, because we had to pivot pretty quick. So I think I had 14 weeks, give or take, maybe a little more than that, to get my license and hit the ground running because of when I knew my job would end. So and I was able to do that. So I did that in 4-ish months, 3 to 4 months. And that was really good for us at the time. It definitely just invites a certain type of people in some ways, because it goes, hey, there's really high rewards here. You can make a ton of money, and there's very little you have to do to get into it. And then what we run into is not everybody has the same kind of support, which is why I think there's a high turnover rate in real estate. And not everybody has a strong moral compass. And so that's also a part of why I think realtors get a bad reputation sometimes, which is something you and I've talked about this. Like, it took me probably 8 months to be willing to call myself a realtor because of what I felt, even the negative connotations were around the word. But to get back to the point of fear, the barrier of entry was low. And honestly, like for me, I had a lot of conversations at that time about, well, what should I do next? And I was really pretty flexible. I was like, I really just need to pay my bills. I'm the kind of person that I really do think I could thrive anywhere. You could place me and I could at least play the game well enough and find the right people to survive and maybe even thrive. But for you, I mean, for real estate, and I think I've tried to share as much of my gratitude as I can towards you around this subject. But a big part of the reason why I got into real estate was my conversation with you, because I knew. So there's a couple things of perspective that really made that transition less difficult. One was you. So you and I had a relationship prior to me doing that, because you obviously helped us sell our house, and also you knew my wife for a really long time. You and I had very similar backgrounds and very similar personalities. So I was like, okay, this guy, he gets me. And I think you were really clear up front to say, hey, like, if you want to do this, I'll do whatever I can to help you succeed. Yeah. So that was one. The other part of it was that while we had a mortgage and we had medical bills and student loan debt and all of that, with a second kid on the way, I knew we wouldn't be homeless if I failed, right? I knew that we could sell our house. I knew that we had family and friends. Like, as of right now, I haven't made so many mistakes that, like, we have people who love us and would take us in if we needed them to. Yeah. Right. So, like, a worst case scenario, I fail, we can't pay our bills, I default on our mortgage, I default on my student loans, I have to go into bankruptcy, all of that. We have family both here in Houston and around the country who would be like, sure, come live with us till you get your feet on the ground. And like, that would suck and it would hurt my pride, but that was fine. Like I was okay with that. I was willing to roll those dice. And I think that, I mean, I'm a prideful person. I legitimately am. I will not like pretend that I am a humble person by any means of the imagination. I think every person is more humble than me. And yet,
Cheers. Yes.
yeah, cheers. And yet at the same time, that element of pride, like
Yeah.
that wasn't the thing that I took pride in, right? So I didn't really care. It doesn't, it's not a hard hit to my ego for me to say, hey, I tried real estate. I just didn't have it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't have the work ethic. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the knowledge, and I failed. And that is what it is. I don't have a problem. I wouldn't have ever had a problem telling people that. And I mean, we got within that first year. I mean, there were 4 times when we have all those bills and pay like all those debts that we owe, and we had less than $200 to our name as a family. Um, and so we're like really negative by $100,000 with student loans and medical
Yeah.
bills and everything. And one time, like all the way down to $43 in our checking account, nothing in our savings account. Um, and then, you know, it would work out to the grace of God because of the kindness of people who supported me, like you and the rest of our leadership at KW Platinum, or friends and families who referred me or called me or reached out to me or responded to something that I put out there. Like because of all that, it just happened to work out. And so some of that is me, some of that is the work that I put in. That's probably one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn is being okay with not being able to point out the cause and effect relationship of success,
Yeah.
right? Because I feel like some people, their jobs, like, I mean, my wife is an educator. Her success is very clearly determined by the work that she does. Like she puts in this work and it works or it doesn't and all that. For me, I kind of just put a lot of stuff out there and sometimes it comes back. I mean, I'm casting seeds and hoping that something grows and produces fruit. Um, and so, yeah, I think for me, when I think about the fear aspect of it, there's definitely fear, but I'm constantly hedging my bets. I'm constantly saying, how can I surround myself with people or things or situations in which, even if this goes south, like I'll probably be okay. And that's probably, I think, maybe like I don't know that I'm particularly brave. I
Yeah.
think I'm just
Yeah.
constantly working the angles to say I'm going to be okay here. But like, where's my next safety net?
Well,
Um,
so, so it's funny though that you say that. Is it like, um, the, gosh, I don't even know how to put this into words the right way that doesn't sound like rude or whatever. But essentially, it's like the fear doesn't exist because I've already figured out how to land softly, And so
Mhm.
there's a few things that I pulled out of what you just said though, um, because I don't. We're drawing the parallel of just one example so that we could grab the nuggets
Yeah.
out of it. But like I think that's how you handle yourself in many ways. And what you said is, hey, number one is that who else like me has done something similar to this. Number
Hmm.
two, where are my true limitations and leverage in all of this? And then three, if I fail, okay. If I fail, okay. And so, like, that's a beautiful mixture of going into anything where I've got to make a major decision or even minor decisions. Like, I got to make a decision. And there's
Hmm.
fear all the way around that, even just to the point of like making like phone calls can be fearful for those of us who are in the sales
Yeah.
profession. And it's like, one, who's done this like me? Okay, so if Billy can do this every single day and Billy's just like me, there's got to be something happening with Billy. Then I need
Hmm.
to see what Billy's got going on. Two, Billy's making these phone calls. I know I can make these phone calls. And so here's probably how I need to make these phone calls. And if it fails, then like I didn't lose anything.
Hmm.
And so like you understand where all of your limitations, where all of your leverages, you understand like all that stuff. And yeah, that does create a soft landing. It does create this moment of, yeah, if this bottoms out, I'm okay. But I think it's because you waited. I think we run from fear instead of looking at fear going, this was God's nature response to make sure that I survive in
Hmm.
challenging situations. It wasn't to make me incapable of movement. It was to,
Yeah.
I think, actually create movement. Fear
Yeah.
creates movement. And
Yeah.
so a lot of people look at fear and it paralyzes them. I
Mhm.
like what you do, and you and I talk a lot about these
Yeah.
kind of like little moments, but it's like everything that you do, you learn in those moments about like, and you weigh in those moments about what to do next. And
Yeah.
Anyways, I just thought it was worth like a very first starting conversation. So I love that. I think those are the three things that I'm going to take away. Um, Now, I do want to jump into, I warned you that we are going to go here. Like, you're an Enneagram guy.
Yeah.
And I say that, like, I don't know if you label people that way. Like, you're an Enneagram guy. Although
Yeah.
I feel like the Enneagram people are the same. The old joke about how can you tell if somebody's a vegan or do CrossFit?
They'll tell you.
Yeah, they'll tell you exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
Enneagram people, you're not that way, but a lot of them are like, well, what's your Enneagram number? I can tell that you're a wing 79432
Yeah.
Delta. It's like, no, I'm not. I don't know. I'm making fun of people. I apologize. I just don't understand it enough. But so
I think
you're an Enneagram
there's a
now.
culture that comes along with it for sure.
Do you see like so in your ability to take risks, is there anything that's laying into that like idea of the Enneagram personalities? Because I actually do believe in a lot of the behavior stuff. I just haven't spent the
Yeah.
time to research it. My wife has, and I love when she goes, I got to just show you something because I know you give me a hard time, and she'll show me something that Enneagram professionals or experts kind of put out there, and it's like, yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Cheers.
Yeah.
But looking at your Enneagram and drawing that parallel, is there anything that you see that in there that like kind of puts you in a risk taker category anyways?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm happy to label myself as an Enneagram guy. Talking about like again being a prideful first person, this is a thing that I've had to like stop flexing on because it's really gotten popular in the last couple of years, like especially within the evangelical Christian community. And like I've been reading about the Enneagram since 2010. So like I have like a decade of like knowledge and study on this. And the Enneagram's been around for thousands of years, but like so like people are like, "Oh man, like do you know about the Enneagram?" It's like, "Do I know about the
Dude,
Enneagram?"
I know about.
The reason I don't talk about it all the time is because I've been talking about it for so long. It's not like a
Yeah,
fad for me. It's just
right.
like
No,
a
it's
part of my way of life.
how do you why did the hipster burn his mouth when he was drinking his coffee?
Why?
Because he was drinking it before it got too cool. Something like
That's
that. It's
awesome.
a terrible.
I
I
like that.
butchered
Yeah,
that one. And
I like that.
essentially,
That's
right?
good.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So like
So
you're like the guy who's like, man, I listened to Dave Matthews before you put the bumper sticker on, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's you.
yeah.
Okay, cool, good.
Exactly. Yeah, I knew this before it was cool, and and like that flex saying that doesn't ever get me any brownie points. Like no one's ever like, "Oh, really? Wow, you're so awesome." Like, it never goes well. People are like, "Oh, you kind of suck." But so okay, Enneagram stuff, and when it comes to fear, so this is part of the reason why I think the Enneagram it's really great and it's challenging as a fad because for those that don't know, the Enneagram is a personality matrix, if you will, that focuses on internal motivations versus external manifestations. And it also includes a lot of um, kind of examination of a person's health and how healthy or unhealthy they are and what different types look like when they're really healthy or what they look like when they're really unhealthy. And because it focuses on motivation, it can be really, really helpful when you're doing kind of that self-examination, self-reflection, and that work. The challenging part about that is that almost everyone has been building coping mechanisms to avoid confronting their deepest pains and their deepest desires for their whole life. So when you start reading about it, most people want to identify with what they think they want to be versus doing the hard work of saying what actually drives me and motivates me. So, for years, like again, I was reading Enneagram stuff and had completely mistyped myself, didn't really like I thought I was this, I thought I wanted to be this. I was trying to project, oh yeah, no, like I'm this person.
Yeah.
I am a driven person that always wants to succeed. And like I kind of saw myself as what is called an Enneagram 3, which is an achiever, because any situation I'd ever been in, I had worked my way up through the ranks,
Yeah.
whether it's socially or professionally. Um, but then it wasn't until years later that I was working at a job and I had a really good friend who also knew the Enneagram really well. And we've sat next to each other for years. And he goes, "Hey, man, I think you should just really kind of rethink the Enneagram stuff and who you might see yourself as." Because he said, he quoted me to myself. He goes, "I have heard you say, I never put forth more than 70% effort into anything." He was like, a 3 achiever would never say that. And they would never do that. He was like, I really just think you should look into this. And that led me down a path of kind of re-examination, self-examination, to find out that I'm in fact a 7, which is an enthusiast, which again, like they can look very similar from the outside, but really it comes down to what is driving me on the inside. And so as a 7, as an enthusiast, my primary motivation, and I'm not kidding you, that almost every decision in my life is, if not decided by these things, is heavily influenced by my desire to pursue pleasure and avoid pain. And so, like for me, fear is a really interesting thing, because again, when I'm sitting there analyzing a situation to say, how am I going to make this work for myself? I'm constantly doing that all the time. That's my strongest muscle, is like even with our kids, as we parent our kids, my wife and I, I'm constantly making decisions, thinking, if I do this right now in this situation with our kids, whether it's like feeding them or putting them to bed or letting them watch a movie or whatever, how will that, like, what result will that produce for me in 3 hours? Which is a very kind of selfish perspective, but I'm constantly like thinking through and analyzing the cost benefit of saying, will this lead to a pleasurable result for me, or will this put me in a situation where I am miserable? And I will do almost everything to avoid miserable situations. So when it comes to the Enneagram stuff and the fear, knowing that has become really, really helpful, because I do tend to avoid hard conversations. I tend to avoid situations that I will know will cause me stress or anxiety, or just discomfort in general. And learning that about myself has helped me mature, um, in a way that I'm able to at least recognize when I start getting into some avoidance patterns, and say, wait a second, maybe like me watching 5 movies on a Tuesday in the middle of the day while my wife is at work and my kids are at school is not the best action. And maybe I'm doing that because I feel some kind of tension over here and I am desperately running away from it. And so at 23, absolutely, let's go watch
Yeah,
as much TV,
let's go to
whatever
the
we can
movie.
do
Yeah,
to
let's do it.
not do that. And now, some days I'm still in that place where I will indulge and be like, I'm not dealing with that. But more and more maturity has been like, yeah, I definitely want to not deal with this. But again, this goes back to perspective. A more mature perspective for me is, this may suck to confront this pain or this difficult situation right now, but it will cause more pain if I leave it alone and ignore it. Right. So maturity has been, hey, this might suck right now in this moment, but it will be better and more pleasurable in the long term for me to confront it in the present right now and nip it in the bud, versus letting it fester and then dealing with all of the anxiety that comes along with avoidance patterns.
Yeah.
Um, that's a lot to
Yeah.
dump,
Yeah.
but
So okay, now you said something that's really cool. Is maturity then our speed to pain? Is maturity our actual movement, our speed to pain? That's a cool thought. I mean, I don't know. Like, we're not going to open up that box probably right here for the
yeah,
next, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes. But that's
yeah,
really interesting. I like that perspective. I don't know that you were saying it in that way to like necessarily make a point, but part of me in my brain goes, yeah, maturity is the speed of pain. If you think about anybody who you even look at, let's just put it in a much different category that we could like be a chess player looking down on.
yeah,
If we were really looking at leadership and a mature, somebody who we would call a mature leader, it
yeah.
really is a speed to pain, a speed to the painful conversations that we know will actually
Mhm.
enlighten. Now, the enlightenment isn't always going to, enlightenment is not necessarily always going to be our way or the best way, but enlightenment is going to be a cause of getting into the pain segment. So I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting. Is maturity just our speed to pain? Because a very mature leader will move
Mm,
quickly to the painful thing so that they can
yeah.
make the corrective actions to get everybody growing in the right direction.
Yeah.
Look at you.
I mean, I think it's a big part of that, and a willingness to face discomfort. And I know plenty of people, and for some people, that's not an issue. Like I have one of my best friends. He's in a leadership position within his company, and he is a guy who I almost revels in dealing with conflict at work. Like he invites it. He invites argument, not argument in the
Right.
sense of fighting, but argument for the sake of you present your arguments, I'll present mine, and the best argument will win. And I think that's very off-putting to a lot of people because they're not used to that kind of interaction where, we tend to be very polite as a society sometimes. But I mean,
unless we're typing on a keyboard, then we'll
yeah, absolutely not. But he thrives in that. And he's really good at that, and he knows for him, the way I know what I know about him as an Enneagram 6 and a loyalist and his need for security. He is that instinct to go directly to the pain point right away is his default. So he's like, this isn't right. Let's address it. And for me, that's my exact opposite instinct. But again, so that's why I like the Enneagram so much is when you start to figure out those motivation pieces, you can start playing with it. It's been helpful for my wife as she has figured out what motivates her and how we interact and why certain interactions happen. So for her, she's an Enneagram 1, which basically means her desire is to feel good, not good, like not pleasurable, but like right, like good and right and true versus bad and wrong. And so she kind of lives by this internal code of this is what is right and this is what is wrong, and I do what is right and I don't do what is wrong. And one of the things we've had to a lot of the conversations we've had is, hey, just because that's how you see the world doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Like maybe like there's another good and right way to do a thing.
Yeah.
And of course for her, she's like, hey, you have to be a grown up and sometimes you have to do hard things. And I go, yes, you're right. Thank you. I love you. I would really love to not, but thank you.
I don't remember. I think Ellen's a 1. I gotta remember, but I think she's a 1. I know that I'm a. I think she tells me I haven't done enough research. I'm a 7. I think my wing is an 8. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's absolutely true for you. I don't know Ellen well enough, and that's another thing that I've learned with the Enneagram stuff is because it's internal motivations. It's really challenging to try to label somebody else, and it typically ends up just biting in the ass. And you'd be like, I know what motivates you.
Yeah. I want to. I don't want to spend all the time on just the Enneagram. I do want to shift gears, but I don't want to bypass. I do think that people have done a disservice to themselves to do some self-exploration in any of the behavioral traits, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that most people will give a hard time to DISC because there's only 4 things. It's like you can't put people in 4 categories. I'm like, well, you can't. But if somebody's not going to do any of them, that's the easiest space. Then do it. Yeah. However, so if you look at DISC compared to Enneagram, I mean, it's light years away from each other as far as like the difficulty of really the evaluation. The reality is that everybody should be evaluating their behaviors and those that are around them so they understand the interaction. It helps. What are some resources to understand Enneagram better? I know that it's the best case scenarios to have a coach walk you through the Enneagram stuff. I do know that would be the best case scenario, yet not all of us are going to take that step. Is there 1 or 2 sources out there that would be the best place that we could put a period on this? Because I want to talk about fatherhood for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. My go-to website is like the Enneagram Institute. I think if you just Google Enneagram Institute, Enneagram is spelled funny. It's ENNEAGRAM. So Enneagram Institute, they have a free test you can take. The test is not conclusive by any means. And it's a good place to start and just kind of start reading. They'll say, hey, these are you kind of maybe most likely your top 3. Start reading those, start seeing what you resonate with, what you don't resonate with when it comes to like your fears and what motivates you. And I would honestly, like, this is where it's hard. Like, I think the best way to start digging into it and identifying it is start reading the different types and looking what they look like when they're unhealthy. And then start kind of looking at thinking about yourself of like, really, when you've been in your worst of times, and the reason I say that is because when you're in the worst of times, you typically are not capable of hiding very well. So your more truest self kind of reveals itself. So anyway, I would take the test. I'd read about the types. It's really, really interesting. There are some really great podcasts out there. There's so many resources now because it has become more mainstream and more popular. I think you just Google it and you'll find all kinds of stuff.
Okay. Well then, Google it. Use
Google it.
Use the Google button. So you'd mentioned earlier that one of your favorite things to be known by is by dad or by father.
Yeah.
So like, where does that come from? Like, tell me more about that.
Um, yeah, I just, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. It's always something I've always wanted to be. I mean, I knew from as a small child, like I was like, I remember being like in the first grade, like chasing after a girl, being like, we have to become boyfriend girlfriend because then that we can get married and then we can have kids and a family and like that would be everything. So I think at a young age I identified like having a family would make me happy and it would be
Yeah.
pleasurable and like it would be a good experience. And I spent so much time like chasing that. I think there were plenty of people throughout my life who like labeled me as a serial monogamist because I was like always in a serious relationship. Like I just like did not do well being single. And it was like one of my groomsmen before I ever got married, like it's just who's just a good friend. It was like, hey Rusty, like it's okay to not want to be single. Like it's okay for you to want to be married. Because I think there was a lot of like time at that time in some of the Christian culture, there was a lot of like, hey, you just need to be okay with it. Like you need to be content. And I
Yeah.
was like, this sucks. I'm lonely.
No, like,
I just want
yeah.
some people to, like call my own. And then I got married, and Jess was my best friend for years and years. We met when we
Yeah.
were 18, didn't get married. Like we dated a little bit, but then we're just really good friends for a long time. Got married when we were like 25, 26, somewhere around there. And then of course had our boys for the last more or less 4 years now. And man, so a big part of like to tie this to the Enneagram stuff, a big part of a fear for a seven is being trapped, is feeling being what in a difficult situation or in pain and not feeling like there is a way to get out of that pain. Which again is I'm constantly like looking like where's my exit, who are my people, how can I make this situation work for me. And so commitment in marriage and all that can actually be really hard for a seven, because it's like, well, this is what I'm choosing. Like, I'm getting married to this one person, and like, and yet I've said this a lot. Like, I thrive in structure, and I'm
Yeah.
not always great at creating structure for myself. It's something that I've gotten better at, and it's part of the reason why I found a little bit of success. But like for in school growing up, my best classes were my hardest teachers. My lowest grade in college was a remedial math that I took as like a throwaway class because I had to have a math class, and I almost failed it because I was like, "This is so easy. I don't need to do all this work."
Yeah.
But my hardest classes with like the hardest teachers who always everybody thought were like the meanest teachers, those A's, always A's. And what I found that like having accountability, having structure makes me happy. And so for my boys, of course, like they're little, like they're toddlers, and they require a lot of time and a lot of energy. And it actually really grounds me because I go, well, this is what I'm doing. I have to do this. And I don't have to worry about what else could I be doing that would be fun? What movies should I watch? Or what game should I play? Or who should I hang out with? Like all of that anxiety kind of goes away because the question is already answered. I have my people, I have my family, and I love them, and they're a safe place, and they're a safe place for me to just be me. I don't need to perform, and I don't need to do a song and dance. And so being a dad, like I don't know, man, like I love it. I don't know how to go beyond it. My boys are amazing. I love my kids. I think my kids are just the best kids in the whole wide world. They're
Yeah.
not perfect by any means, and they drive me crazy, but I just think they're the best. And it's a privilege to get to be their dad and watch them grow. And it's yeah, I don't know. I just keep saying it's the best because that's all it is.
Yeah, no. Well, it's kind of like so. I always knew that that was going to be one of the things that I love most was being a dad. And I always knew it was going to be one of those things. I think there's a lot of things that when you look back, and I won't make this statement for everybody. I'm only going to make the statement for me. But when I look back, having a hard or a difficult childhood, there were always
Hmm.
still sweet moments that I had with my mom, always sweet moments that I had with my dad,
Yeah,
and dad was always a space that I could have fun, laughter, and play. He was also very much a different space. Like there were some difficulties side to him as well,
yeah,
but those were the things that came to my brain when I thought, this is who I want to be as a dad. And now I've got that. I get to be that, and I get to be more than that. And I think that's one of the things that excites me about it is that, like, it's our ability to be more than,
Mm-hmm.
um, to be more than for me, and I think for you, just because I know and I trust where that I can say this out loud and make this assumption though, is that
Mm-hmm.
I think what it drove me to be is that I have to be routed spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be grounded spiritually, because if I have to be more than, I have to be connected to more than, and that's just a really difficult thing.
Yeah.
So I think it drives us to be the best version of ourselves, which isn't always true. I mean, there are times that I'm like,
Sure.
I'm taking crazy pills here. Like, you
Yeah.
go to your room. Why? It doesn't matter why. Just go to your room. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just get out of my
Yeah.
face. You know, it's like, that's a terrible way to act. But at the end of the day, there's still that conviction that kind of is ground that comes back. And I think that conviction is actually a spiritual conviction of like, be a father. Don't
Yeah.
be a don't be authority. Be a father. And a father
Mm-hmm.
can be corrective, but a father always has just that, the fruit of the spirit kind of cycles
Yeah.
through that. And I think about what you said a second ago about being grounded. I mean, not being grounded, but being structured. I'm grateful for my, like, I think again, I think she's an Enneagram one. My Enneagram one, Ellen,
Yeah.
she created so much structure with our kids that I found myself, part of enjoying fatherhood was
Mm-hmm.
enjoying watching Ellen be a mother and knowing like she's elevating our home so that then I
Yeah.
can be the best version of me.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
how phenomenal that is.
Yeah. No, yeah. I'd say this all the time. Like it's a hard, I think, thing sometimes because yeah, like I get to be more or less the fun one a lot of the times,
Yeah.
and that's just my instinct again. Like that's who I am. So it's like let's have fun. Like let's just do that. That'll be a good time. But like if my boys have teeth when they grow up, it'll be because their mother made them wash them. Like if they don't die of gangrene for being filthy little pigs, like it'll be because
Oh,
Jess made them take baths. If they're
yeah.
like have any kind of nutritional health at all, it will because Jess like steered them towards
Right.
healthy food in right proportions. So like I get that that's not the most glamorous side of it, but like if they are alive and healthy, like as adults, it'll be because my wife like loved them in the way she knew how to love them.
Yeah.
Um, and I appreciate that so much. And I think your point of being more than and being plugged into more than. You and I've talked a little bit about this. Like I'm a reluctant leader,
Yeah.
despite I think having a lot of the natural proclivities towards leadership of being well spoken and being comfortable in front of people and having opinions and all of that. There is some there's some wire that's slightly disconnected in me that gives me just enough insecurity to say, but I don't want to do it. And I think part of it comes down to when you step into a role of leadership, genuine, real leadership, people will hold you accountable and they will count on you and rely upon you. And that scares me. That
Yeah.
scares me that people will, and like I have to do that every day with my clients. People
Yeah.
are relying on me on a
Yeah.
regular basis, and I am a leader in that situation. And it is challenging when when things go sideways and we have difficult situations to be like, I can't get out of this. Like I can't just be
Yeah.
like, bye. And so parenthood, like there's no choice about this. Like
Yeah.
these boys are looking to me to lead them, and it is a wonderful exercise and opportunity and um, reason to lead and to say, hey, they are counting on me. I don't get a choice out of this, and I think that's a part of why it has helped mature me
Yeah.
is because it's forced me to lead. It's forced me into situations where I don't have a choice, and I just have to deal with it. And sometimes I deal with it poorly, and I have to learn from that, but that little like microcosm of leading these tiny little humans transition like that carries over to how I interact with clients, how I interact with team members and members in our like market center and just in general like with the community. And um, I've gotten a lot of encouragement from friends and family that just say that since I became a father, they've seen some of the best parts of me continue to grow and maybe some of the more unattractive sides of me diminish a little. Maybe not a lot, but a little. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the opportunity to grow and mature and not be held as a who I was in the past.
You know, Russy, I want to. We're gonna transition to ending here. Before I give you your time to say kind of whatever you want to say to close us out, I do want to make sure. I rarely ask anybody about kind of where they're at or where they've been kind of in life, their success and all that stuff, because I just want to have real conversations with real people and grab the wisdom that comes from this. That's my whole point and purpose for
Yeah.
creating these interview moments was like so much of our wisdom comes from these little tiny little conversations that happen in
Yeah.
our lives with the people who are around us, not necessarily from these great big thought leaders who are like
Hmm.
doing these great podcasts and this great TED talk and this
Yeah. Yeah.
it's this moment. I want to say like part of how real you are is so comforting, I think, to so many people, and it will even become that much more effective towards the people who may be watching this, knowing that like, how long have you been in real estate?
2 years.
2 years?
Like 2 years and a month.
Yeah, 2 years in a month. I know. So very little time, and in that 2 years, a lot of gains and a lot of false starts, and yet the whole time, you've had a really, I mean, you've done some really phenomenal things, and you've had phenomenal success. Like you're the rookie of the year for our office, which is something very awesome to be touted. That's not rookie
Yeah.
of the year because you're a cool guy. It's rookie of the year because of your numbers. And we have
Yeah.
an office of 250 people. I'm not going to give away your numbers, but I'm just going to make sure and draw the line of like
Yeah.
Russy has been successful. And I want
Yeah.
you to hear what in this conversation, like we all struggle with the same things, pretending like nobody else has our scars.
Yeah.
And the reality is that you got to keep moving forward. Like, use this type of conversation that we have to go, I think, all the way back to what you said in the very beginning. Somebody out there, just like me, is
Hmm.
doing this or
Yeah.
has done something similar to this. And then the just like me side is not just my skill sets, it's my weaknesses, my fears, my
Mhm.
insecurities, my it's all of it mixed in together. And I just want to
Yeah.
encourage everybody out there, like, um, the hard days are really hard. The
Hmm.
good days are really good. And that messy middle side of things is where so much growth happens that we think nobody else is experiencing these things. And your
Yeah.
day to day can be as there's no level of difficulty that makes your difficulty different or better. And so I just want to say that out loud that like, gosh, my hope is that you're attaching to the fact that like life is hard and we're all
Hmm.
dealing with it. And so
Yeah.
be vulnerable with each other to be in relationship and to grow. So here's how I like to end, Rusty.
Yeah.
Is there anything like if you had this moment of like, okay, here's the one thing that I was taught that I would love to be able to share that was given to me, or a cause that you're championing that now that you have an audience to be able to share this with, or something that like you're learning, something that's like really in that space of if you had an audience today to say a few sentences to close out on, what would that be?
Yeah. The thing, I think it touches on what you just shared, and I appreciate that encouragement. Is